prepaid collect call from
Levi Jonathan.
an incarcerated individual at Polk County South Jail. This call is not private. It will be recorded and may be monitored. If you believe this should be a private call, please hang up and follow facility instructions to register this number as a private number. To accept charges and consent to this recorded call, press 1. To refuse charges, press. Thank you for using Securus. You may start the conversation now.
All praise Jah King. Simon Peter is the most notable of Christ's disciples. It is said that the gospel came from the teachings of Peter and was first recorded as the book of Mark, a student of Peter's. Clement of Alexandria is recorded as one who verifies this account. The name Peter is a variation of the Greek word Petros, meaning rock, and is translated from the word Kephas, so named by Christ. But Joh's plan for Petros Kephas was to found Jah Church upon his testimony from Matthew 16:18, so that Jah's sheep will be fed. Peter fell short at times to fulfill the role of a disciple. Peter's shortcoming by doubting Christ was perhaps most dramatically illustrated when Christ rebuked him, calling him Satan. He also lacked faith as Christ called him to walk on Jah water, and was proven to be as one offended by Christ when the rooster crowed. These defects serve to boast the credibility of the gospel. Peter went on to become a foremost leader in Jah Church. In Jah Book of Acts, Peter makes his debut by linking the talking of Jah tongues to Jah prophecy of Joel and visions of David, as he reveals the meaning of Christ, a man approved by Jah. Peter later fortifies his position as Christ's man advocate when he preaches to the men of Israel following his miraculous healing of the lame man and his fiery deliverance to Jerusalem's high priest and company soon after. Peter is then called to bring salvation to the Gentiles. On at least 2 occasions, Peter is cast into jail where he is freed by an angel. Although no account of Peter's final days exists in Acts, Christ's last words in the book of John indicate that Kephas is prepared to follow I to martyrdom. In the books bearing Peter's name, the apostle writes of John reward for those who endure through tribulation for Jah's cause. Peter instructs on disciplinary measures, a kind of how to be holy guide. Peter's work gets straight to the point. Mostly Peter offers a vision of hope, a relief to the oppressed, an antidote for those in pain. Peter also warns those and warns of those who turn from Jah's acceptable way. One verse of Peter's first epistle stands out as odd. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for Lord's sake. This is astonishing, considering it is coming from the man who proclaimed, as he was reprimanded for defying the order not to teach Jah message to the locals, we ought to obey God rather than men. The same man who Christ had scolded for saying Christ paid taxes. The same man that cut off the ear of the soldier. The same man who called Rome Babylon. So what is the reason for Peter's apparent departure from the righteous resistance of the past? Before we dismiss this as another instance of Peter favoring establishes that Jah children are free, and it is by serving Jah is this made to be. Even when a man is employed by another through the monotonous fetters of chains and iron, is liberty made possible by submitting to Jah will. Man seeks to control your mind. If we focus too much on man's way, we lose sight of Jah way, and this is what the devil wants. So does Peter I instruct to patiently endure suffering for well-doing, and this shall be your reward. In the speech of today, John King talks about the alliance with the USA, particularly in economic investments. His Imperial Majesty says that the Ethiopian currency, a currency with him image imprinted on his face, had become the only U.S. dollar-based currency in the Middle East at that time. He mentions the opening of exploitation of Ethiopian resources to American businesses, specifically its oil. This may sound confusing in a time when the planet is being choked by carbon emissions, causing incurable environmental cancer, and the U.S. dollar has become a weapon of oppression. Let me remember that the prophecy must be fulfilled, that in these times the plagues are being released, and if Jah is truly in control, then this is Jah's way. Even certain nations that have remained apart from the construct of capital centricism have relied on oil for development and the dollar for trade. So who is really to blame? Keep in mind that the speech you hear was delivered in 1954. Times were different. The United States of America was thriving. The opportunity for one to prosper was a reality. Equal opportunity remained a problem, sure, even as it is in modern times. Yet take into consideration, the ancestors of the transatlantic slave trade had far more land holdings in 1954 than they do today, and there was less people. Even though they were not being portrayed as rich folk on TV, in 1954 the future was hopeful for many who lived in the USA. Was Emperor Selassie wrong for tapping into this energy? If you consider the improvements of Ethiopia since World War II to be bad, so be it. But if you recognize Ethiopia's advancement towards modernization, an advancement that Haile Selassie led the charge of as positive, then you recognize this truth. Yahweh is higher than me. Jah's ways are higher than my way. Even when we don't understand everything, we must stand under Jah, to be Jah faithful and loyal subjects. Emperor Haile Selassie sought diplomatic solutions to the pressing problems of not only his nation, yet those of the earth. Perhaps at times these solutions were not always completely desirable, yet as Christ is the master of balance, so Selassie I retained a neutral position in an effort to obtain the very best outcome. Sometimes, but not always, this takes compromise. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost its saltiness, with what shall the world be seasoned? Likewise, it takes knowledge of what one's enemies seek so as to rightly fit this balance between polar forces. What Emperor Selassie seeks is peace and prosperity for all people. He knows how to sacrifice himself to achieve this. Trust in Jah. This is our command. We may feel such deep indifference towards others for the harm they have caused. Yet don't let this get in the way of our judgment. Jah is watching. Jah expects us as soldiers of his army to rise above those personal grudges that hold us down. We are only hurting ourselves when we allow our emotions to rule of. To be certain, Christ called them hypocrites. Christ also taught his followers to love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, pray for them which persecute you. This is the balance that Selassie brings. We don't always get everything we want when we want it. It takes patience and humility to reach Jah Kingdom. We must recognize we don't have all the answers. Our way is higher than our way. And in this realization are we made whole, so that we can live in peace. For after all, who wants constant war? As Simeon Kifa says, honor all, love Jah brotherhood, fear Jah, honor Jah King. So here it is, Emperor Haile Selassie's address to the United States Congress, May 26, 1954. I count it a privilege to address what is one of the greatest parliaments in the world today, where the forces that make great one of the most powerful nations have been and are being brought to bear, and where issues of worldwide importance have been decided. The extent of that power and influence and the rapidity with which you have reached such a summit of importance for the rest of the world are unparalleled in world history and surpass all conceivable comparisons. 200 years ago today, as I am speaking, General George Washington won the Battle of Fort Necessity, a victory in the gradual forging together of the United States. What a phenomenal progress has been made in that interval of 200 years, an interval that, you may pardon me, as a representative of one of the most ancient nations in the world, is surely but a remarkably short passage of time. So great are your power and wealth that the budget of a single American city often equals that of an entire nation. As in the case of other countries, you gave us lend-lease assistance during the war, and at present, both mutual security and technical assistance. Yet so vast are your power and resources that even after deducting all expenses of the federal government, you have met the cost of this assistance in 1/4 of an hour, 15 minutes of your annual production. Of what interest is it to you, then, you may well ask, that I, the head of what must be for you a small and remote country, should appear before you in the midst of your deliberations. I do not take it upon myself to point out why Ethiopia is important to the United States. That you can best judge for yourselves, but rather to explain to you, with brevity, the circumstances that make Ethiopia a significant factor in world politics. Since so much of the world politics is today influenced by the decisions that you, members of Congress, reach here in these halls, it is perhaps not unimportant that I set out these considerations for you. A moment ago, I remarked that, for you, Ethiopia must appear to be a small and remote country. Both of these terms are purely relative. In fact, so far as size is concerned, Ethiopia has exactly the area and population of your entire Pacific Far West, consisting of the states of California, Oregon, Washington, and also Idaho. We are remote, perhaps, only in the sense that we enjoy secure position on the high plateau of East Africa, protected by the Red Sea and our mountain fastness. However, by the numerous airlines that link us with the rest of the world, it is possible to arrive in Washington from Addis Ababa in less than 2 days. By one of those strange parallels of history, Ethiopia and a certain well-known country of the Far East, who both enjoy highly defensible and strategic positions in their respective areas of the world, both for similar reasons, simultaneously, at the beginning of the 17th centuries, came out of their period of isolation. As in the case of the other country, That isolation came to an end
Thank you for using
in the latter half of the 19th century, with this difference that upon abandoning her policy of isolation, she was immediately called upon to defend against tremendous odds her thousand-year-old independence. Indeed, so bitter has been this struggle against foreign aggrandizement that were it not for our persistence and for the enormous social, economic, and material advance Ethiopia has made in the interval, and particularly since the last war, Ethiopia might very well have returned to a policy of isolation. In consequence, in many respects, and particularly since the last World War, Ethiopia has become a new frontier of widely expanding opportunities, notwithstanding the tremendous setback we suffered in the unprovoked invasion of our country 19 years ago, and the long years of unaided struggle against a stronger enemy. In the last 7 years have seen the quadrupling of our foreign trade, currency, and foreign exchange holdings. Holdings of American dollars have increased 10 times over. The Ethiopian dollar has become the only U.S. dollar-based currency in the Middle East today. The assets of our national bank of issue have increased 1,000%. Blessed with what is perhaps the most fertile soil in Africa, well-watered, and with a wide variety of climates ranging from the temperate of the plateau to the tropical of the valleys, Ethiopia can grow throughout the year crops normally raised only in widely separated areas of the Earth's surface. Since the war, Ethiopia has become the granaries of the Middle East, as well as the only exporter of meat, cereals, and vegetables. Whereas, at the end of the war, every educational facility had been destroyed, today, schools are springing up throughout the land, the enrollment has quadrupled, and as the pioneer days in the United States, and indeed, I presume, as in the lives of many of the distinguished members of Congress here present, school children and their zeal for education take all sorts of work in order to earn money, to purchase textbooks, and to pursue their education. Finally, through the return in 1952 of its historical ports on the Red Sea and of the long-lost territory of Eritrea, Ethiopia has not only regained access to the sea, but has been one of the few states in the post-war world to have regained a lost territory pursuant to post-war treaties and an application of peaceful methods. We have thus become a land of expanding opportunities where the American pioneering spirit, ingenuity, and technical abilities have been and will continue to be welcomed. A 1,000-year-old history of struggles to defend the territorial integrity of our country, the long fight for liberation 2 decades ago, and the recent campaign in Korea have given our Army an A-spirit de corps and a fighting spirit that I believe can stand without misgiving for comparison. Today, our fighting forces are among the largest and best trained in the Middle East. Unlike many other countries, Ethiopia has long been a nation of small, rather than large landowners. Moreover, a profoundly democratic tradition has assured in the past, as it assures today, the rise to the highest post of responsibility in the government of men of the humblest origins. It is but natural, therefore, that as a state that has existed for 3,000 years and has regained its independence by the blood of its patriots, that commands the allegiance and loyalty of even its most lowly subjects, and enjoys an unusually sound economy, should have a regime of marked stability in that area of the world where stability is so frequently absent today. Such is the state of Ethiopia today. It is against this background that I speak to you of Ethiopia as a factor in world politics. Her geographic location is of great significance, and her long shoreline and its archipelago of hundreds of islands. Ethiopia Ethiopia occupies a unique position on the most constricted and important strategic lines of communication in the world that passes through the Red Sea. She also lies on the other most strategic line of communication in the world, namely the world's band of telecommunications that, because of natural phenomena, circles the world at the equator. However, in yet perhaps a broader sense, is Ethiopia's geographical position of significance. Through her location on the shores of the Red Sea and in the Horn of East Africa, Ethiopia has profound historical ties with the rest of the Middle East as well as with Africa. In this respect, she stands in a completely unique position. Her culture and social structure were founded in the mingling of her original culture and civilization with the Hamitic and Semitic migrations into Africa from the Arabian Peninsula, and in fact today our language, Amharic, is a member of that large family of Hamitic and Semitic tongues, and therefore intimately related to Hebrew and Arabic. Indeed, as at one time Ethiopia extended to both sides of the Red Sea, as well as north to Upper Egypt. It was therefore not without reason that during the Middle Ages, the emperor was known as he who maintains order between the Christians and Muslims. A profound comprehension of and sympathy with the other states of the Middle East naturally inspires Ethiopian national policies. On the other hand, 3,000 years of history make of Ethiopia a profoundly African state and all that term implies. In the United Nations, she has been to the forefront in the defense of Africa's racial, economic, and social interests. Finally, both culturally and geographically, Ethiopia serves to a unique degree as the link between the Middle East and Africa. Situated in the Horn of Africa and along the shores of the Red Sea, with the desert areas of Africa to the north and west, it is but natural that Ethiopia should be the filter known as he who maintains order between the Christians and Muslims. A profound comprehension and sympathy with the other states of the Middle East naturally inspires Ethiopian national policies through whom the ideas and influences of the continent of Africa should pass to the East and vice versa. Thus, our social and political outlook and orientation became important not only in terms of Middle Eastern and African, but also in terms of world politics. And this leads me to the point, to a factor I consider to be of unique significance. We have a profound orientation towards the West. One consideration alone, although there are others, would suffice to explain this result. The two Americas and the continent of Europe together constitute exactly 1/3 of concentrated peoples of the Christian faith. It is in this 1/3 that, but rare exceptions, Christianity does not extend beyond the confines of the Mediterranean. Here I find it significant that, in point of fact, is this remaining 2/3 of the Earth's surface, Ethiopia is the state having the largest Christian population and is by far the largest Christian state in the Middle East. In fact, Ethiopia is unique among the nations of the world in that it is today the one remaining Christian state that can trace her history unbroken as a Christian polity from the days when the Roman Empire became a vigorous reality. The strength of the Christian traditions has been of vital significance in our national history, and as a force for the unification of the Empire of Ethiopia. It is this force that gives us, among the other countries of the Middle East, a profound orientation towards the West. We read the same Bible, we speak this common language. It is this heritage of ideas and principles that is excluded from our conscience and indeed from our unconscious processes the possibility of compromising with these principles we hold sacred. We have sought to remain faithful to the principles of respect for the right of others and to the right of each people to an independent existence. We, like you, are profoundly opposed to the un-Christian use of force and are, as you, attached to the concept of the Pacific settlements of disputes. Our long struggle before the outbreak of the last war catastrophe, as indeed our recent participation in the combined efforts and glorious comradeship in arms in Korea, have marked us, like you, in giving more than lip service to these ideals. It is your deep comprehension to our ideals and struggles that has been my privilege to lead, at times not without heartbreak, my beloved people, and our common comradeship in arms that have laid a very sure and lasting basis for friendship between a great and a small country. Last year, we concluded with you a new treaty of friendship, commerce, and navigation designed to assure to American business enterprises expanded opportunities in Ethiopia. Our dollar-based currency is also there to assure the ready return to the United States of the profits of their investments. We have entrusted to American enterprises the development of our civil aviation to what has surpassed all expectations. To American enterprise, we have confided the exploitation of our oil resources as well as our gold deposits. Although my country is 8,000 miles removed from the eastern seaboard of the United States, the United States exports to Ethiopia have, notwithstanding this heavy handicap, pushed forward to the forefront in Ethiopia. Conversely, the United States stands in the first rank of countries in whom we export. Ethiopia has, from the province of Kaffa, given the world the name and product of coffee. The coffee you drink attains its unique and pleasant American flavor in part at least through the added mixture of Ethiopian coffee. American shoes are made in part at least from Ethiopian goat skins that are principally exported to the United States. On the other hand, you have given us valuable support, not only in lend-lease assistance during the war, and today through mutual security and technical assistance agreements, but you've also powerfully aided us in obtaining rectification of our long-standing injustices. If today the brother territory of Eritrea stands finally united under Jah Crown, and if Ethiopia has regained her shorelines on the Red Sea, it has been due, in no small measure, to the contribution of the United States of America. I'm happy to take this occasion to express to you, the Congress that has approved this assistance, the sincere and lasting appreciation of my people. This collaboration with the West and with the United States in particular has taken yet broader forms. There's our military collaboration based on the Mutual Security Program. If we leave out the Atlantic Group, Ethiopia has been the only state in the Middle East to follow the example of the United States in sending forces to Korea for the defense of collective security. In doing so, Ethiopia has been inspired by a vision broader than her preoccupation with regional policies or advantages. Nearly 2 decades ago, I personally assumed before history the responsibility of placing the fate of my beloved people on the issue of collective security, for surely, at that time, and for the first time in world history, that issue was posed
1 minute left.
in all its clarity. My searching of conscience convinced me of the rightness of my course, and if, after untold suffering, and indeed unaided resistance at the time of the aggression, we now see the final vindication of that principle in our joint action in Korea, I can only be thankful that God gave me the strength to persist in our faith until the moment of its recent glorious vindication. We do not view this principle as an extenuation for failing to defend our homeland to the last drop of one's blood. And indeed, our own struggles during the last 2 decades bear testimony to our conviction that in matters of collective security, as of providence, God helps him who helps himself. With that said, we feel that nowhere can the call for aid against aggression be refused by any state, large or small. It is rather a universal principle, or it is no principle at all. It cannot admit a regional application or be of regional responsibility. That is why we, like you, have sent troops halfway around the world to Korea. We must face that responsibility for its application, wherever it may arise in these troubled hours of world history. Faithful to the sacred memory of her patriots who fell in Ethiopia and in Korea in defense of that principle, Ethiopia could not do otherwise. Nations of the world have persistently sought for and have striven to apply some system for assuring peace of the world. Many solutions have been proposed, and many have failed. Today, the system we have advocated, and with the name of Ethiopia, is inseparably associated as, after her sacrifices of 2 decades ago, and her recent sacrifices with the United States and others in Korea, finally demonstrated its worth. However, no system, not even that of collective security, can succeed unless there is a firm determination to apply it universally, both in space and time, whatever the cost. Having successfully applied collective security in Korea, we must now, wherever in the world peace is threatened, pursue its application more resolutely than ever, and with courageous acceptance of its burdens. We have the sacred duty to our children to spare them the sacrifices we have known. I call upon the world for this determination, to fearlessly apply and to accept, as you and we have accepted, the sacrifices of collective security. It is here that our common Christian heritage unites two peoples across the globe in a community of ideals and endeavor. Ethiopia seeks only to affirm and broaden that cooperation between peace-loving nations.